For most of the galaxy's history, humanity did not matter. At least, that was what the others believed. Beyond Earth, the stars were ruled by old civilizations, ancient alliances, long memories, powerful fleets. They had watched young species rise and fall for millions of years, and humans were seen as nothing more than a brief spark. Loud, emotional, violent, always divided, always late to the greater story of the universe. Earth itself was barely noticed. A blue world at the edge of mapped space. Politically unstable, militarily insignificant, not worth conquering, not worth saving. When humanity first reached the stars, it did not arrive as a single united force. Human ships carried different flags, different languages, different beliefs. Even among the stars, humans argued with one another. The Galactic Council saw this and smiled quietly. Another young species wasting its energy on itself. But what the galaxy failed to understand was this. Humans did not need unity to endure. They only needed a reason. That reason came when the border systems began to fall. The enemy did not announce itself. It never did. Entire colonies went silent overnight. Trade routes collapsed. Signals vanished. Star maps changed as if reality itself had been edited. Those who encountered the enemy rarely survived long enough to describe it. The old powers panicked. Fleets were recalled. Borders were sealed. Worlds were abandoned without warning. The Galactic Council debated procedures while systems burned. Human colonies were among the first to be hit. Outposts built on hope and thin metal were erased. Civilian transports vanished. Emergency signals flooded human networks, then went quiet one by one. Earth received the reports late, filtered through broken relays and half-translated alien warnings. For the first time since reaching space, humanity stopped arguing. On Earth, leaders met behind closed doors, not to negotiate trade or territory, but survival. There was no grand speech broadcast to the public, no declaration of war sent to the stars. Humanity had learned long ago that survival did not require permission. Ships were recalled. Old designs were pulled from archives. Experimental drives were activated without approval. Civilian engineers worked alongside military crews. Shipyards glowed day and night. And something else happened. Something no other species expected. Humans began placing banners. At first, they were small, digital signals embedded into navigation space. Markers left behind after evacuation. Simple messages, translated into every known language. Humans passed here. Lives were lost here. This system is remembered. The Gahatsi noticed, but did not understand. When the first human fleet engaged the enemy, observers expected a quick defeat. Human ships were fewer, weaker, and slower than those of the old powers. Their weapons were crude, their shields inefficient, yet they did not retreat. Human commanders fought differently. They did not protect territory. They protected people. Evacuation routes were guarded at all costs. Supply ships were sacrificed to save refugee convoys. When an enemy force appeared overwhelming, humans did not withdraw. They delayed. Minutes mattered, sometimes seconds. A human cruiser held a jump point alone for nearly an hour. Engines burning past safe limits, shields collapsing layer by layer. When it finally broke apart, its last transmission was not a distress call, it was coordinates. And attached to those coordinates was a banner. A symbol began to appear across star charts. Not a claim of ownership, not a warning, a mark of presence. The old civilizations were confused. Why mark places you could not hold? Why fight battles you could not win? But survivors began to notice a pattern. Where human banners appeared, resistance followed. Not always victory, sometimes only defiance, sometimes only survival. But the enemy never advanced cleanly through human-marked space. Every system cost them time. Every encounter drained resources. Every human stand slowed the darkness just enough for others to escape. Slowly, reluctantly, the galaxy adjusted its maps. Human space was no longer empty. It was contested as the war spread. Something unexpected happened. Alien refugees began following human fleets. Not because humans were the strongest, but because they stayed. When others fled, humans stayed behind just long enough to hold a line, long enough to create hope. Human banners multiplied, painted on hulls, projected into vacuum, burned into asteroid surfaces, even etched into wreckage drifting silently through space. Each banner carried the same unspoken message. We were here. We did not run. The Galactic Council finally took notice. Emergency sessions turned into arguments. Some demanded humans be ordered to withdraw. Others argued that human resistance was buying precious time. No one asked the humans what they planned next, because by then, humanity was no longer reacting. They were advancing. New fleets emerged from unexpected directions. Ships built not for beauty or diplomacy, but endurance. Their hulls bore scars before they ever saw battle. Their crews were volunteers, miners, pilots, teachers, engineers, people who had lost worlds and refused to lose more. When these fleets arrived at contested systems, they did not broadcast threats, they raised banners, not symbols of conquest, symbols of promise. And for the first time in galactic history, an enemy designed to erase civilizations began to hesitate, because everywhere it pushed forward, it found the same thing waiting in the dark. human ships, human resolve, and banners among the stars. For most of the galaxy, hope was a resource limited, rationed, protected. For humans, hope was something else. It was stubborn. It was loud. And once it was wounded, it became dangerous. After the first banners appeared, the enemy began to adapt. It learned that human ships did not behave like the others. Human captains did not follow the standard rules of retreat, surrender, or negotiation. Humans did not value survival the way older species did. They valued meaning, they valued the people behind them, and if they had to die, they wanted their death to change something. So the enemy changed its pattern. Instead of crushing colonies quickly, it began to strike in ways meant to break morale. It attacked hospitals first, communication relays second. It targeted evacuation corridors, turning safe routes into traps. It left wreckage drifting where it could be seen. It wanted fear to spread faster than ships could travel. The Galactic Council watched these changes with growing panic. Their fleets were powerful, but their politics were slow. Every decision required votes. Every action required agreement. Entire systems were lost while council members argued over definitions. What counted as invasion? What counted as genocide? What counted as a temporary strategic loss? Humans did not attend those debates. They were already moving. A second wave of human fleets was forming beyond the public eye. Smaller task groups, built for speed and sabotage. On paper, they did not exist. Their crews were not officially enlisted. Their supplies were not logged through normal channels. Some ships were built in hidden orbital yards above worlds the council had already declared non-essential. In human command rooms, maps were not just maps anymore. They were scars. Each lost colony was marked, each destroyed convoy, each vanished signal. The banners were no longer only symbols of remembrance. They became lines of intent. Where the enemy pushed, the humans would answer. But the galaxy still misunderstood what the banners meant. Many believed the banners were simply propaganda, a way to look brave while losing, a human habit, dramatic, emotional, theatrical. The old civilizations had seen young species do that before. Big speeches, noble sacrifices, and then, extinction. Yet something kept happening that should not have been possible. Worlds that had been declared lost began to flicker back to life. A mining colony in a dead system sent a signal after 3 months of silence. A transport ship escaped an enemy blockade by following coordinates from a human banner marker that should not have been there. An alien refugee fleet found shelter at a hidden station, no council. Archive listed because a human scout had left a banner in open space, a silent arrow pointing toward survival. The enemy could erase cities. It could break fleets, but it struggled to erase a network built on chaos and sacrifice. Humans were building something new in the darkness, not an empire, a chain of safe points, hidden routes, and last stand stations that turned empty space into a living map. The banners were the language of that map. Every banner carried coded layers, visible slogans for morale, encrypted signals for human ships, emergency translations for refugees. One banner might say, in bright human letters, "We stand." But beneath it, the same signal could contain fuel locations, medical caches, jump path corrections, and warning signs about enemy patterns. The enemy began destroying banners whenever it found them. That only made the humans place more. Soon, alien pilots started copying the habit. It began quietly, almost like superstition. A small symbol painted inside a cockpit, a human-style patch sewn onto a suit, a banner marker left near a hidden refueling asteroid. Humans did not ask them to do it. The galaxy did it because it needed something to believe in. As the war spread, one battle changed everything. It happened near the Kestrel Line, cluster of systems that formed a natural corridor toward the heart of the Galactic Council's territory. The Council had planned to hold that corridor for years. They built stations, fortress moons, and layered defense grids. In theory, nothing could pass through without being crushed. Then the enemy arrived. It came without warning, emerging in numbers that should not have been possible. Council fleets engaged immediately and were overwhelmed in hours. One by one, fortress stations went dark. Defense moons cracked like eggs. The corridor became a graveyard of drifting metal. The Council issued an emergency retreat order. Millions of civilians were still trapped behind the collapsing line, and the Council did what it had always done in crisis. It protected itself. First, human observers heard the retreat order and understood the truth. If the Kestrel Line fell, the Council worlds would fall next. The war would be over. Not slowly, not after years, but soon. The enemy would reach the core systems and rewrite the galaxy in silence. A human commander named Mara Ellis, once a cargo pilot, now leading a fleet built from scavenged hulls, received the Council's retreat message. She did not reply. Instead, she sent one message to every ship under her command. Raise the banners? All of them. Within minutes, human ships poured into the Kestrel corridor. The galaxy expected them to be crushed, but the humans did not attack like a standard fleet. They attacked like a storm. Small ships darted in and out of enemy formations, targeting sensors and drive cores. Larger cruisers moved into positions that made no strategic sense until observers realized what they were doing. They were forming a wall, not to win, but to block. Too slow to hold space long enough for evacuation. Behind them, civilian transports began moving. At first, only human ships. Then alien ships followed, because they saw the banners, human banners, ignited across the corridor, projected in bright color against the black, pulsing like beacons. Not one banner, hundreds, thousands, every ship carried one. Every station that could still broadcast projected one. Even wreckage fields were lit with banner markers, turning the graveyard into a warning sign that said, "This is not empty space. This is a line." The enemy struck with brutal force. Human ships broke apart, hulls burned, crews died at their stations, the corridor filled with debris and fire, and still, humans held. Not by being stronger, by being willing. Mara Ilias ordered a maneuver no council admiral would ever approve. She placed 3 of her largest ships directly into the enemy's main advance route and locked their drives. They became immovable masses of metal, absorbing impacts, forcing enemy vessels to slow and redirect. Those 3 ships were destroyed, but the enemy advance slowed for 11 minutes. In those 11 minutes, more than 2 million civilians escaped. For the first time, the Galactic Council saw something in numbers that it could not deny. Human tactics were saving the galaxy. By the end of the Kestrel battle, the corridor was mostly ruins. The Council fleets were shattered. Human ships were reduced to fragments, but the civilians were alive. And in the middle of the wreckage field, drifting between broken ships, there was a final banner, still damaged, but visible. It did not say victory. It did not say we won. It said something simpler: you got out. That banner changed how the galaxy spoke about humans. Not because humans were heroes, but because they made the galaxy feel shame. Older civilizations had built strength. They had built laws. They had built councils and fleets and history, but in the moment, it mattered. They had hesitated. Humans had not. After Kestrel, alien governments began quietly sending envoys not to the council, but to human commanders. They did not ask for treaties. They asked for lessons. How did humans keep fighting after losing worlds? How did humans keep placing banners after being erased? How did humans survive a war designed to delete them? Human leaders did not give speeches. They gave coordinates, they gave routes, they gave new banners, and across the galaxy, something shifted. The war was no longer only about survival. It became about defiance. Because the enemy had learned how to kill, but it still did not understand how to break a species that turned pain into a flag, and humanity was just beginning to raise those flags higher. The enemy had never faced a problem like humanity before, not because humans were stronger, or smarter, or more advanced, but because they refused to disappear quietly. After the Kestrel line, the war changed shape. The enemy stopped pushing straight toward the galactic core. Instead, it began circling human-marked space, probing it like a wound that would not close. Systems once considered unimportant suddenly became targets simply because human banners had been seen there. The enemy had learned that where humans stood, resistance followed. Human commanders noticed the shift immediately. Enemy movements were no longer random. They were cautious, deliberate, watching. This frightened the older civilizations far more than open aggression ever had. For the first time, the enemy was thinking. Human fleets adapted in their own way. They stopped acting like a single force and became something harder to predict. Banners were no longer raised only during battle or evacuation. They appeared days before human ships arrived. Sometimes weeks, sometimes in places where no ships followed at all. False banners, ghosts, signals, markers left behind by unmanned probes or dying drones. Drifting through space, the galaxy began to whisper about it. Human banners were no longer just promises. They were threats. Alien analysts tried to decode human strategy and failed. There was no consistent logic by traditional standards. Humans did not defend only valuable worlds. They did not concentrate fleets where victory was most likely. They showed up where loss was guaranteed and stayed until the cost became unacceptable for the enemy. It was wasteful, inefficient, unreasonable, and it worked. Behind the scenes, humanity was paying a terrible price. Earth itself had not been attacked yet, but everyone knew it would be. Human shipyards were running beyond capacity. Entire generations of young people never saw their home worlds again. Messages of loss flowed constantly: names, ships, coordinates, last words. Humans learned to grieve quickly. There was no time for long funerals. Instead, names were added to banner archives, digital memorials attached to star maps. If a ship was lost defending a system, its banner remained there permanently. Broadcasting the crew's names into the dark, the galaxy began to understand something new. Human banners were not flags of territory, they were gravestones that refused to be silent. The third turning point came when the enemy finally tried something bold. When after Earth. The attack did not come as a massive invasion that would have been expected. Instead, the enemy sent a small, precise force designed not to destroy Earth outright, but to erase it symbolically. The plan was simple: strike Earth's orbital infrastructure, shatter its communications, and broadcast humanity's defeat across the stars. No banners, no last stands, just silence. The enemy believed that if Earth fell quietly, the banners would lose their meaning. What it did not know was that humanity had prepared for this moment longer than anyone realized. Earth was not alone. Human fleets had been quietly gathering far beyond the solar system, hidden behind false retreats and decoy losses. Ships that appeared destroyed had limped away into deep space. Civilian transports had been converted into carriers. Mining platforms became weapon arrays, and above Earth, banners had already been raised. Not in space, in culture. Across human worlds, people had begun sharing the same symbol. A simple mark, a raised line, intersected by a star. Children painted it on walls. Pilots etched it into their helmets. Engineers carved it into bulkheads. The symbol did not mean victory, it meant still here. When the enemy strike force arrived at Earth's outer defenses, it found something unexpected waiting. Human ships did not rush to engage. They waited. They let the enemy move closer. Let it believe the plan was working. Let it think Earth was unguarded, exposed. Afraid. Then the banners activated. Not one signal. Millions. Human banners flared across the solar system. Projected from moons, satellites, stations, even civilian habitats. They filled space with light and noise and defiance. Every banner carried the same message, translated automatically into every known language. This world is not empty. Human fleets emerged from hidden vectors, from behind planets, from shadowed orbits, from deep space jumps calculated years in advance. The enemy force was surrounded before it could react. The battle for Earth was short and brutal. Human ships fought with precision born from desperation. They targeted engines first, then command nodes, then escape routes. They did not pursue fleeing vessels. They let them run. Because this battle was not about annihilation, it was about being seen. The enemy strike force was shattered within hours. Survivors fled, broadcasting fragmented data back into the void. And with that data, the enemy finally understood something it had missed. Humanity was not fighting to win the war quickly. Humanity was fighting to change how war worked. After Earth, the galaxy shifted again. Species that had once stayed neutral began quietly aiding human operations. Supplies disappeared from council warehouses and reappeared at human stations. Navigation data was accidentally leaked. Enemy movements were delayed by errors that no one officially admitted to. The Galactic Council lost control without realizing it. Humanity had become the war's center. Not politically, but emotionally, people did not rally around council orders anymore. They followed banners. Entire alien fleets began adopting the practice. Their banners looked different colors, symbols, languages, but the idea was the same. A refusal to vanish quietly, a promise to leave a mark. Even in defeat, the enemy began encountering resistance everywhere, not organized. Resistance, personal resistance. A freighter captain refusing to abandon a convoy because a banner marked the route. A station crew staying behind to hold doors because human signals promised evacuation was coming. A planetary governor delaying surrender long enough for children to escape because someone, somewhere, had raised a banner before. The war became slow, painfully slow, and that terrified the enemy more than any fleet ever had, because the enemy had been built to end wars quickly, to erase civilizations before they could adapt, to turn stars quiet. Humanity had done the opposite. It had made the war loud. It had filled space with stories, symbols, and memory. Every loss created more resistance. Every destruction planted more banners. Even when humans lost, they changed the terrain of the war. By the end of the third phase, the galaxy no longer asked whether humanity would survive. The question became something else. What would remain after them? Because even if humanity fell, their banners would not. They would drift in space, pulse, in silence, mark places where courage once lived, and the enemy now understood the truth. It had tried to avoid. You could kill humans, you could burn their worlds, but you could not undo what they had taught the galaxy. That survival was not just about strength, it was about leaving proof that you stood, and humanity had turned that proof into a weapon. By the time the war reached its fourth year, the galaxy had become a different place. Trade lanes that once carried luxury goods now carried refugees. Beautiful capital worlds that once hosted festivals now ran blackout drills. Even the oldest civilizations, the ones that used to speak with calm certainty, now sounded tired, nervous, and unsure. But across that fear, a strange new thing had spread. Banners. They were everywhere now. Not just human banners. Not just simple signals. Whole constellations were marked with symbols of resistance. On some worlds, banners were projected into the night sky like artificial auroras. On others, they were stitched into clothing, carved into stone, painted onto the hulls of ships that had no business still flying. The enemy did not understand culture, but it understood patterns, and it had learned that banners meant trouble. So, it decided to do what I always did when something became unpredictable. It tried to remove the choice. The next phase of the enemy's strategy was not aimed at fleets or planets. It was aimed at hope itself. Across dozens of systems, the enemy began deploying something the galaxy had never seen. Silent structures that formed in space like black geometry. They did not fire weapons. They did not chase ships. They simply arrived, and then space changed around them. Jump travel became unstable. Long-range communication began to distort. Navigation systems returned wrong coordinates. Star charts shifted slightly every hour, like the universe was being rewritten in slow motion. Refugee convoys vanished. Rescue fleets arrived days late. Entire groups of ships died not from battle, but from being lost trapped between wrong maps and broken jumps. The council called it the Shroud. That name spread fast, because people needed a word for fear. The Shroud did what the enemy had always wanted. It created silence. Not by killing everyone at once, but by making everyone feel alone. It turned the galaxy into pockets of isolated worlds that could not help each other. And in that isolation, old instincts returned. Borders closed. Worlds refused. Refugees. Alliances broke. The council demanded discipline and order. But even its own members began hoarding resources. Every species started thinking the same ugly thought. If the Shroud grows, only a few will survive. So let it be us. Humanity watched this happening with cold clarity. They had seen it before on Earth. In old wars, in disasters, in the moments when people stopped being brave and started being careful. Humanity knew what the Shroud was really doing. It was not cutting space, it was cutting trust. So humanity did not answer with speeches. They answered with motion. A new kind of human fleet began to appear at the edges of Shroud zones. These ships were not the biggest. They were not the strongest. They were built like tool-stick hulls, redundant engines, strange sensor arrays, and crews trained for navigation without reliable maps. Some alien commanders called them banner ships, because their purpose was simple: go in, mark the path, bring someone out. These human fleets took missions other species considered impossible. They entered Shroud-distorted systems with manual navigation and star sighting, using older methods and new instincts. They mapped safe jump windows with trial and risk. They followed tiny gravitational changes the way sailors once followed tides, and wherever they succeeded, they raised banners. Not only in space. In data, every safe route they found was encoded into banners that could be read by anyone, in any language. Every stabilized corridor was marked with a repeating symbol that said, safe passage. Every hidden station inside Shroud space carried a banner beacon that pulsed like a lighthouse. The enemy began targeting those beacons. Humanity made them harder to kill. Some banners were no longer stationary signals. They were carried by fast drones that moved constantly. Some were woven into the noise of background radiation, almost impossible to locate. Some were embedded in the light patterns of distant stars, using scientific tricks only a species desperate enough would attempt, and slowly, the Shroud stopped being pure isolation. Not because it weakened, but because humans turned it into a maze they could navigate. That was when the council finally understood something painful. Humanity was no longer just defending the galaxy, humanity was leading it. Yet leadership came with a cost. Inside human territory, the losses were mounting. The banner archives grew so large that they became entire memorial servers, floating in protected orbits. Families on Earth and on distant colonies learned to read war updates like weather. Another station lost. Another convoy missing. Another banner added to the map. Some humans began asking the question everyone feared. What if this never ends? Even human courage had limits. Even human anger could burn out. Ships could be rebuilt, but people could not be replaced forever. The enemy seemed endless. The Shroud was expanding. The galaxy was exhausted. That was when the humans uncovered the first real clue. It came from a captured fragment of enemy structure salvaged by a human boarding team during a brutal raid near a Shroud node. Most species would have destroyed it out of fear. Humans dragged it home, cut it open, and studied it piece by piece. And deep inside, they found patterns. Not random. Not organic. Not natural. It was technology. Yes, but not just technology. It was a system, a network. The Shroud nodes were not independent weapons. They were linked, like parts of a single machine, spread across space. A human scientist named Dr. Elaine Sato, known for being calm even during disasters, spent weeks comparing the captured fragments, signal structure against the strange distortions reported across the war. Then she saw it. The Shroud wasn't only blocking travel, it was listening. It was measuring responses, tracking movement, learning routes, predicting behavior. The enemy wasn't using the Shroud to isolate the galaxy forever. It was using it to map the galaxy's habits, then close every possible escape. A trap built at the scale of stars. When Sato presented her findings to human command, the room went silent, not with fear, but with focus. Because a trap, no matter how large, still had rules, and rules could be broken. For the first time in the war, humanity had something it could aim at. Not a fleet, not a world, a core mechanism. If the Shroud was a network, it had a center, maybe not a single location, but a central logic. A pulse, a rhythm, a control signal that kept it synchronized. Human commanders understood immediately what this meant. The war could not be won by holding lines forever. It had to be won by cutting the network. But cutting it would require something the galaxy had avoided since the war began. A coordinated strike with many species working together at the same time, with no delay, no hesitation, and no selfish retreat. the council was still too slow for that, so humanity did something shocking. It called the galaxy, directly, not through the council, through the banners, across thousands of systems. A new banner message appeared, sinking through every safe channel humans had built. It was not a threat, not propaganda, not a poem, it was an invitation. A simple set of coordinates, many of them paired with a time window, and a line that carried a quiet, dangerous promise. We found the pattern. If you want the darkness to end, meet us here. Some worlds ignored it, some were too afraid, but many did not ignore it, because by now, too many lives had been saved by those banners. Too many children had escaped down routes marked by human sacrifice. Too many alien captains had watched humans die buying minutes they didn't have to buy, and deep inside, the galaxy felt something it had not felt in centuries, a reason to stand together. So fleets began moving, old rivals traveled side by side. Species that once refused to share airlocks now shared fuel. The most advanced warships in the galaxy formed up beside rough human cruisers held together by welding scars and stubbornness. End as they gathered. A sight spread across open space like a myth becoming real. Thousands of banners, human banners, alien banners. New symbols born from old fear. They filled the darkness with color and meaning. They made the void look occupied by something more powerful than fleets. They made it look occupied by choice and far away. Inside the Shroud network, the enemy finally reacted, not with silence, with urgency, because it understood, at last, what humanity had been building since the first colonies fell. Not an empire, a message, a galaxy that would not go quietly. And now that message was becoming a weapon aimed straight at the heart of the dark.